At that time, Jem, my soul was crushed. That was one of the times, I think it was the third time I tried to take my own life. Took bottles and bottles of Valium. And now here I am 20 plus years later looking back at that moment. And as crushing as it was, it taught me to be self-reliant, helped me to make hundreds of thousands of dollars and go on to build and exit my first company. You are like Godzilla walking through a city with a huge tail swinging behind you, knocking down buildings wherever you go. Except guess what? Those aren't buildings. Those are people whose lives you're destroying. She looks at my boyfriend, says, "Leave her. It's what she needs," and walks away. After I picked my chin up off the floor, I was like, UTF.
Hello and welcome to The Unknown Path, the podcast where you hear stories of the unique grit and determination behind the success you see from the outside, the unlikely synchronicities, the coincidences and connections, the untravelled roads forged one step at a time, the trials and tribulations, the hard knocks and the celebrations. This is an authentic sharing of human stories. I am so delighted to welcome today's guest, a dear friend and someone I deeply admire, Jennifer Hill. Jen is the founding director and CEO of OptiMatch, a visionary human connection and technology company that uses intelligent matching to help people build deeper, more meaningful relationships in business and beyond. But Jennifer is so much more than a founder and an entrepreneur. She's a true connector of hearts and minds, a speaker, an author, and evolutionary leader who has spent decades helping people and organizations understand what it really means to connect, to lead with presence, and to co-create with integrity and care. Her work spans coaching, keynote speaking, writing, and building tools that unlock human potential. And she's inspired thousands of people around the world through her insights on connection, motivation, resilience, and trust. It is an absolute joy to have her here today. Jen, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Jem. I'm so honored to get to be a guest and just to see this unfold of how you get to help so many millions of people around the world with this show.
Yeah, thank you. So before we start exploring the stories of your life and the twists and turns and the decisions and the mistakes and the wins and all the stuff that got you here, could you perhaps just share with our audience a bit about what now looks like for Jen Hill? It's 2026 when we're recording this. What's life filling up with for you at the moment?
I love this question, Jem. As you know, I love to ask people what lights you up or what matters to you. It's one of the most profound questions I think that we can ask ourselves or one another. And I would say what's really lighting me up right now is, as you know, being the fairy godmother of human connection. It's been a lot of fun. I just came back from a speaking tour in the US. I was doing 3 different keynotes spanning from, where was I? I don't even remember, San Diego, Orlando, and Palm Beach. And what was really kind of titillating and fun about it is I was sharing excerpts from the new book that I have coming out later this year, The Recovering Blank Hole, if you know what I mean. I don't know if we could say the word on
You
here,
can
but
say whatever you want. I'm an Australian. This is an Aussie podcast. You can say whatever you want.
okay. Fair enough. So The Recovering Asshole. So I have a book coming out later this year called The Recovering Asshole. And I've been speaking for about 20 years on corporate stages, international stages, all different sizes and shapes. And it was just so fun, Jem, to see how deeply people are resonating with the story. I basically begin the book by saying, if you're wondering, like I talk about this idea that I never had a manual. For me, it's like he got a manual and she got a manual on how to be a human. But when I opened mine, it was blank inside. So one of the last lines of the prologue is, so if you've ever opened your manual and found it was blank inside, or if you've ever wondered if you might be the asshole in someone else's story, this book is for you. Let's begin. So
I
I've
love
just been
that.
having so much fun, like sharing little snippets and things like that, because people keep coming to me, Jem, and they say, "Oh, I'm a jerk. Oh, I'm not enough of a jerk. I'm too much of a pleaser. I need to learn how to." And it's been so beautiful just to see the spectrum of how we all show up as human beings. And there is no right or wrong. We're all just perfectly imperfect human beings doing the best we can each and every day.
Yeah, wow. I love that. Have you found that since writing the book, The Recovering Asshole, and now obviously on speaking tours and all of the traveling around the world that you do. Have you found now that you're talking about it that so many people relate and so many people come up and go, "Oh my God, I thought it was just me."
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Well, the funny thing is the book isn't even out yet, and it just started naturally, organically coming up. I started sharing last year in a few podcasts I was on the anti-asshole prayer. Anybody can go to antiassholeprayer.com. That's one of my other favorites is how do you like zap the jerks in your life? Now that you've realized that maybe you or somebody in your life is a jerk, how do you surround yourself with your tribe like you and I have, Jen? Like, how do we find in this world that is more disconnected and dependent on technology than human connection, how do we reconnect to ourselves, others, and purpose and find that meaningful purpose and tribe and connection? And so, as I've been sharing this with people, it's been 100% like that. I literally had people lining up to talk to me after some of these talks saying, "Thank you for shedding light on it. Thank you for sharing about this mental health journey that you've been on." Because for me, Jem, it was decades of misunderstandings, broken relationships, bulimia, suicidal attempts. I mean, just heartbreaking things that looking back, I have such compassion for the younger versions of myself, all versions of her. And I truly wish from the bottom of my heart, Jem, that I could be the Oprah of human connection and be like, you look under your chair and you get a deep and meaningful relationship with yourself and others, and you look under your chair and we all get deep, meaningful relationships. Because I think at this critical precipice in time, as we're in the balance of humanity, choose which direction we want to go, not good or bad. I'm not here to judge it as either or, but we're looking at, do we depend on technology? Do we rely on technology for our intimacy, our self-worth? Or do we use this as an opportunity to go even more deeply into who we are, what matters to us, how we can add value for humanity and for ourselves? And I think it's a choice we all get to make, and neither one is good or bad. I think that's the danger of being a human is that right now we're falling into one of two camps. This is good, this is bad, this shouldn't be this way, this should be that way. And when we do that, it's a slippery slope because that's a lens of judgment. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is what if we could, number one, Jem, see that there is a lens that we see ourselves and others through? Essentially, at the end of the book, I get you to really judge me harshly. People are like listening, and the opening line of the book is, I may have had to drug my mother, but at least I was no longer alone, right? And people are like, wait, how big of a jerk were you? How big of an
Yeah.
asshole?
Yeah.
But then I get to the end, and the big reveal is a story about my dad. And I had a story my whole life about how my dad was an asshole. And then one day, Jem, I'm 25 years old. I'm in a personal development class. I'm sitting there listening to this teacher talk about the lenses we see ourselves in the world through. And it hits me like thunder. And I go, oh my God, what if my dad is only an asshole because I'm looking for him to be an asshole? And the
Mm.
moment that thought hit me, Jem, I raced down to San Diego. I go to see my dad. He would drink every day. He wasn't working at 2 p.m., starting 2 p.m. on. And I go to his garage slash office, right, at 11 a.m. And I say, Dad, I am so sorry that for the last 25 years of my life, I've treated you like you're an asshole. That is not something I'm committed to anymore, and I'd love to know the real you. Can you tell me about who you really are, Dad, so we can create a new story that we can live in and explore together? And we're just coming up, Jem, on the 2-year anniversary of my dad's passing. And so I get into some of the big breakthroughs and the stories my dad told me that shifted our relationship entirely. And for the last 4 years of my dad's life before he passed, we spoke every single day. We went on to build 2 schools together, one in Nepal and one in Senegal. And it was one of the greatest gifts of my life. And that wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't first been able to see the lens of judgment that I was placing on him. Two, to shift the lens and choose a lens instead of unconditional love and acceptance. And three, this I haven't gotten here yet, but I think this is enlightenment and where we all aim to get is can we eventually move to a lens-free world? Can we actually have no filters? So first you notice you have a filter. Second, you begin to choose the filter you want to apply or the lens. And third, can we eventually get to no filters?
Oh, wow. What a great way to dive into a conversation. There's so much in there. Jen, the parts of you that were even there through the younger years when you were quote unquote an asshole, the parts of you that were there that later on could blossom and you become the woman who had the aha epiphany moment to go to her dad and say, "Dad, I've realized that I've been seeing you as an asshole and I want to get to know who you really are." So the woman that you became, which parts of the little girl that was going to become that woman, are there any parts of you that you can attribute or thank your dad for, even inadvertently, even if he didn't consciously try and be that? I mean, growing up with him as your dad must have had all sorts of impacts on you. Were there any now that you can look back and go, "Wow, I'm actually really glad that happened"?
I look back on everything, Jem, and even the most heart-crushing moments, the moments where I tried to take my own life 3 times between the ages of 18 to 20. Actually, one of those was directly related to my dad, and I don't even know if I've shared this story publicly ever before. So here I was, Jem, and I was 20 years old, and I was in college. I was about to graduate, and I was very fortunate. My parents paid for my college education, and they would help me with room and board and so forth. I left high school at 16 and went straight to college. And I didn't know what money was. Like, it's so funny. Like, here you are, this young kid. So I go to college way too early. And my grandfather, who was like my father figure, and we were very, very close. That was part of the thing that kept my dad and I really separate from each other, is I didn't realize my grandfather and father were in a decades-long pissing match over who would be my true father figure, because my grandfather was the first one to grab me as I was a baby and held me even before my dad held me. So fast forward, here I am, I'm 16. My grandfather gets me a credit card with a $250 limit that I have to kind of charge up and take care of. So by the time I'm 18, Jem, I was given not one, but two $20,000 limit credit cards at the age of 18. And I didn't know my head from my ass. I thought it was Monopoly money. So I literally was the most popular girl with all my friends. I was taking my friends to five-star hotels for $500 a night, buying bottles of wine. I was buying cases. Like, everybody else is getting drunk on vodka and Jello shots and beer. And I'm like, let's go purchase a case of a $50 bottle of wine. A boyfriend, I had a
Wow.
boyfriend who came over. He's like, "Where did you get this bottle of Caymus?" Like, whatever. It was like the best wine of the year. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, my friend's down at the wine shop. They sold it to me." I said, "I have a case of it." He's like, "What?"
Oh,
So here, let me get to the point where my dad changed my life. So here I am, I'm 20. I'm now $40,000 in debt at the age of 20, and barely, like, I'm serving at restaurants. So I don't know, making a couple $100 a week, something like that. And I can't pay the bare minimum on my credit cards. So I remember exactly where I was. I go to talk to my dad in the small little pond in the backyard by their house. And I remember looking into his eyes and begging him, being like, "Dad, please, I desperately need a loan for $10,000 to be able to, cut this debt down and to do what I need to do." And my dad looked at me and he said, "No. No, Jenny. No, you got yourself into this mess. You have to get yourself out of it." And at that time, Jem, my soul was crushed. I saw no way out. That was one of the times, I think it was the third time I tried to take my own life. I took bottles and bottles of Valium and I think it was Xanax or something like that at the time. So in one hand, it was crushing because I felt there was no way out, no way to survive it. I even considered stripping. I'm going to be totally frank with you in the audience, but thank God I was a terrible dancer. That's the
oh,
only thing that
you
kept
couldn't
me
get a
from the
job.
life.
They were like, "No, no, no, sorry, honey, you can't dance."
It's just like people knew I'm autistic, and so I'm very like uncoordinated and kind of like I don't even know what the word is for it, right? But
Right.
that was the only thing that saved my life from going down that path. And then thank God my roommates found me when I tried to take my own life. And now here I am 20 plus years later looking back at that moment.
Mm,
And as crushing as it was, it taught me to be self-reliant. It helped me to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, my early 20s, and go on to build and exit my first company, all because my dad didn't give me that $10,000 at the time where I thought I needed it most. And in retrospect, I look at my sister's life, who I love and adore, and we have a great relationship, but my parents bought her everything. They gave her cars, gave her a house, bought her a house in South Africa. And I talked to my parents about this and I said, in Kabbalah, which is one of the pieces of wisdom that I study, they call that bread of shame. If you give somebody something they didn't earn, something they know they don't deserve, then it sends them spiraling into shame and depression. And my sister went through years of mental health issues, as did I, of course, but it just showed up differently for us. And that moment, though, was a moment that I could look back and be angry and resentful and bitter and say, "Oh, it was my dad's fault. I tried to kill myself." No, that's BS.
mm,
I chose to try to take my own life because I didn't see a different way out. And that then catapulted me into learning how to be a self-sustaining young woman who went on to build a company and sell it.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, those stories, and with the benefit of hindsight. So, Jen, because you can look back and learn from things that have happened, and we do this, right? The benefit of hindsight. How does that inform your philosophical and literal and real world way of approaching things that happen to you in the present? So, if something happens in the present moment that's seemingly just not for you. Like it seems, why did this happen to me? This is really horrible or hard or testing or challenging. How do you approach those situations now as opposed to the way you were when you were 20?
Jem, as you and many of my friends know, I literally have about 186 tools that I use every day.
Yeah.
So some of the tools I use proactively. So one of the things I do, as you know, is I spend 2 hours a day in prayer, meditation, reflection, and using heart focused breathing by heart math to keep myself in a state of what's called coherence physiologically, mentally, and emotionally. So on the one hand, I proactively use those tools every day. On another hand, I was just doing this on the plane the other day. Many different spiritual disciplines, Jem, talk about how we have an opportunity to experience our death before it happens. The death of a relationship, the death of a friendship, the death of a business, whatever. As you know, my business partner literally died very unexpectedly last year.
Mm.
And so when we can proactively uproot our fears, then we can be less impacted by it when something kind of throws a monkey wrench in our life. So, for example, the other day I was flying back from 30 days in the US traveling and speaking, and I was on the plane back from Madrid to Lisbon. And as I was on the plane, I went through my greatest fears, Jem. And one by one, I used one of my favorite methodologies on it called Sedona method. And I imagined my husband dying. And it sounds really painful, and it is, right? And I go, could I simply welcome it if my husband died? No.
Yeah.
Could I allow it if my husband died? No. Could
Mm.
I release it if he died? No. Would I release it? No. When will I release it? And then you say never, right? And you take yourself through this process by Hale Dwoskin called Sedona method. And proactively at the root level, you pull up all your greatest fears and you see if you could come to a place of loving acceptance of your greatest fears happening, then God forbid when something does happen, it gives you greater resilience and capacity. So
Mm.
when things like that happen, and then let's take it back to Julian Adler, my dear friend and business partner who passed away. He helped me. He was instrumental. I think I'm actually going to dedicate the recovering asshole to him
Mm.
because about 13, 14 years ago when we started working together, I was such a dick, Jem, that I remember I was on one of my first coaching calls with Julian. He was my coach before we became business partners. And he said, so today, Jen, I'm going to teach you how to talk to your heart. And I said,
Oh,
go
yeah.
fuck yourself. I'm going to fire you by the end of this call. And so he slowly but surely, he starts to help me. And I once sent an email, all caps, to our team, all in the subject line. Are you all a bunch of fucking morons? Why are you not working harder, faster, smarter? Literally, this was all in caps.
Wow.
And so Julian's like, Jen, so what we're going to do is for the next year, any important emails you send, you're going to run them by me first.
Right.
And he started to help teach me what I didn't know then, Jem, that I understand now, is we're
Yeah.
all designed differently. We're not meant to all just be
Yeah.
replicas of one another. We
Yeah.
all have our faults and our strengths. So Julian taught me to really embrace that. So when he died really radically and suddenly, it was October 28th of 2025. It was a dream come true. We had gotten an offer to buy our company. It was something we had been working for 6 months negotiating the deal. And the day we got the offer, Jem, he died that night. He was having
Mm.
a beer with his friends to celebrate. It was the happiest day of both of our lives. His
Mm.
friends go inside, get another beer. They're all playing guitar and music outside, and they come back and he's dead on the floor.
Mm.
So I promise you, Jem, that every single tool I've ever used in my life was what got me through that period. It was also my husband's best friend, and I was close with his wife. They had just gotten married 4 months prior in Alaska, and I had been at the wedding with them.
Mm.
And life is going to throw you curveballs. People you love are going to die. You're going to have wealth come and wealth will go. You're going to have love and loss and pain and joy and everything in between. And the question is, how can we rise again when we have been crushed so hard that we can't even see straight. We're so disoriented and discombobulated by the curveballs life throws at us.
Mm.
if in those moments you could still find your balance and be grounded? And that's my gift that I wish I could offer each and every one of you is resilience. What if you could have tools so that way, yes, you're going to feel sad. It's not about not feeling sad. I want to be very clear about that. It's about choosing the sadness rather than the sadness choosing you,
Mm.
choosing how long you want to be frustrated, angry, upset with someone or something, and not allowing yourself to wallow in it, but saying, okay, Julian died. I'm going to choose to be sad for a day, a week, a month, whatever it is. And then when that's done, boom, it's like a switch. And you go, okay, now I'm going to pick myself up and do what I need to do and put on my big girl or big boy pants or whatever that might be.
Mm.
And I'm going to take the next baby step towards the future I'm committed to.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. I know there'll be people listening going, oh, what are those tools? What are the tools you're talking about? And we'll have links to your resources, to your books and your courses and how people can, find out more about the tools that you use. Is there one that comes to mind? I mean, just then you alluded to the power of the mind, which is really, truly remarkable. And, I mean, without going too much into my story, but I just related when my youngest brother died on his motorbike, which was very sudden and only 4 months after my dad had died. But when my brother died, that was a real shock because it was like your business partner, your dear friend who just died out of the blue. And that was the same with my brother. And I remember, the grieving period for a couple of weeks, but then I had to go back to work because I had kids to feed, right? And the money wasn't going to come from nowhere. So I had to go to work and I was in a customer facing management role and I had to be shiny and happy. Otherwise we weren't going to sell anything and I wasn't going to earn any money, right? And I used to walk over this hill at the top of the city before walking down into the city. And I'd been driving to work, crying all the way to work, bawling my eyes out. I'd get out of my car, walk up the hill crying. And at the top of the hill, just as I could see the city and the ocean, I imagined this magic door that I just made up. It was a magic door. And I said to my grief, I'm just going to leave you this side of the door. I need to go down and put on happy face. And at the end of the day, I'll come and pick you back up again and we can go continue this grieving process on the way home. And I'd leave my grief at the door, step through this magic door and literally physically feel, okay, I got this. And I'd walk down the hill and I'd go to work and do the thing. And then at the end of the day, I'd walk back through the magic door, pick up my grief and cry my way home. So it wasn't saying I'm not going to grieve at all, but the power of the mind allowed me to actually work with it in a way that meant I could continue on. So when you were talking then about the power of the mind of deciding, right, this is how long I'm going to be sad for, it's quite a remarkable power that we all have access to. I'm just wondering, Jen, is there another tool, and not necessarily for something as strong as the death of a loved one, although it could be, but is there another tool, another resilience tool that you love that's a favorite of yours that you use?
Yes, I'm going to backtrack to the death of a loved one and give everybody a quick tool for that because since we were on the topic, it might be
Mm,
very helpful for people.
mm,
Years ago, when my grandfather died, he was my hero. I was closer to him than my dad for the earlier part of my life until he died when I was 22. And there was a technique that I was taught to write a letter. And there's two different ways that you can do this. One is you write a letter of all the things you regret. I regretted the day my grandfather died. He had been fighting cancer, and I chose to go out. I was obviously devastated. He was everything to me. Like I loved and adored him. And I got really drunk the night before he died. And so the last day I had ever spent with him, I was terribly hungover. Like my best friend had taken me out, to drown my sorrows. I'm like 22, however old I am, right? And I had so deeply regretted that. How many of us have done that, right? Where we weren't in our highest and best state, or we didn't say, I love you to the person, whatever it was. And so I remember writing this letter to my grandfather and just saying, Grandpa, I love you. And I'm so sorry I wasn't able to be fully present. So sometimes if there's things we can't get complete with somebody in life because they die unexpectedly, like Julian or your brother or whomever it might be, can you, number one, write a letter to them to get it complete? Two, another variation of this that was taught to me years later is you can write a question to your deceased loved one. So, dear grandpa, I need your help with this. And then you journal that with your dominant hand, and then you take your non-dominant hand and allow a message to flow through with your non-dominant hand as a response from your loved one. So those are two very simple but easy techniques to help process for anybody who is going through grief or unexpected loss.
yeah.
The other one that I do want to share that has been profound for me and is something I do every single day is inner child work. I have found that our capacity to be in the world is directly related to our age of our inner child and how we're showing up. I wrote an article last year called The Inner Child in the Boardroom, how we often think that there's a 44-year-old or a 50 or a 75 or a 20-year-old, right, who's showing up in our meeting or in our relationship. But let's be honest, Jem, it's often upset 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who
Yeah.
are like
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
tantrums.
Yeah.
So when I went through divorce about 8 years ago, my ex-husband, I was leaving him, and one of my best friends I've known for 20 plus years gave me some of the best advice that I recommend to anybody who's ever been through a breakup or a hardship, a loss in relationship. And she said, Jen, you deserve to find someone who will cherish you. So first, you have to cherish yourself.
Mm.
And that blew my mind, Jem. And it wasn't long after that that I had started doing inner child work. It was around the same time. So now one of my morning practices is I like to put my right hand on my heart, my left hand on my abdomen or womb area. You can do one or the other, whatever feels comfortable for you. And you just gently shut your eyes and allow a few slow, deep breaths. And then you visualize yourself at whatever age you might want to visualize or whatever age comes to you. Maybe he or she or they are 10 or 15 or 12 or 5 is no right or wrong way. And then you check in with yourself every day and you say, how are you feeling today? Like I woke up feeling great. And when I did my inner child work this morning before our interview, she was feeling really scared about something. So that's a mind-blowing thing is at a conscious level as a 44-year-old woman consciously when I woke up, did I know I was feeling sad or scared? No. But when I tapped in, all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I'm really nervous about this. And then I'll ask her, tell me more about that. What do you need to feel safe? How can I support you? And so I'll ask, what are you feeling? I'll ask, what do you need? And then I give her a great big hug. Like I'll squeeze her like this and I'll talk to her and I'll tell her those exact words. I'll say, you are loved and cherished and accepted. And it
Mm.
was actually out of this practice, Jem, it changed my life. I used to be so insecure about dancing, as I mentioned earlier, and other things. And when I started doing inner child work about 8 or 9 plus years ago, one of the things that came up for me is she loves to dance.
Ah,
Dancing is her favorite pastime. So now what's hilarious, after I was the most awkward, strangest dancer, like people used to call me chicken legs and all sorts of weird names when I was in school. And nowadays I dance every single day, Jem. That is part of my favorite part of my day is that I never miss a day of dancing because it makes her happy. Now, rarely, Jem, very, very rarely, I'll forget. I'll be on a plane or I'll be rushing my morning practice because I have an early morning meeting and I'll forget to do inner child work.
yeah.
So this is where it's in resilience. So then around 2 o'clock, I will be having a tantrum like a 3. I'll be like, I hate you. You suck. I might say it to my husband, or I might just be like a jerk to somebody on the phone. And then all of a sudden, and most of the time I'll have awareness about it. I'll go, sweetheart, is that you? And she's like,
Yeah.
you suck. You forgot all about me. I'll never forgive you again. I don't matter. And I'm like, sweetheart, you do matter. And sometimes she won't talk to me for 2 or 3 days after that. But
Right. I love it.
so anyways, that's one of my favorite tools.
Oh, thank you. No, thanks for sharing. That's amazing. And these tools, if someone's never done any of this kind of work, I know that people they feel reticent towards this. So you might be sitting there listening to this going, I'm not doing that. That sounds crazy. Or no, that's weird. Or da la la la. And I think to myself, what's more crazy or weird? Someone who spends time each day dropping in with themselves and creating a foundation of a relationship with self that is just unconditional and loving and um, unconditional and loving, that relationship with self, which then means that when you go out into the big wide world, you're not getting in the way of the work that you do or the relationships that you have with others so much, right? Because it's you don't have the noise or the static or the stuff, the unresolved stuff going on as much for yourself because you're doing the work on smoothing out those creases with your relationship with yourself, which means you can be more present for others. So you're better in your relationships, you're better at work, you're better at your mission or whatever it is that you want to do. So, people say, oh, this self-development movement, it's all narcissistic and it's all about yourself and loving yourself. So, hang on a second, you're missing the point. you do the work with yourself and generate a foundation of genuine self-care and love so that you can get out of the way and make it about everybody else when you go out and serve, right? And that's what I hear from you too, Jen. Hey, I just want to jump, like it was only 13 years ago that you wrote an email in caps lock to everyone saying, fucking come on, like this. When, when, when and how did you start um, this metamorphosis? Because when I met you a couple of years ago, ever since I first met you, you're just this wonderful, gorgeous, delightful human being who cares so much about other people. I mean, as soon as I met you and you heard about my passions, you were like, oh, okay, I'm introducing you to this person and this person and this person. You got to read this book and this resource. And you do this a lot. Every single day you are connecting people and helping people and wanting people to shine. And you really are the fairy godmother of connections. I've never met anyone so globally connected ever. And it's not just me saying this. All of our mutual friends say the same thing about you. So what I'm curious about is how did you go from jerk / arsehole / hard ass businesswoman, boss lady. How did you start to change? Was it working with your coach, your friend, or yeah, I don't know. Can you share with us how that journey happened, the change?
I'll share with you the moment I realized there's before I realized I was an asshole and after. And it's been a 20-year journey of trying to be less of a dick. But even after I first realized I was an asshole, it was still an uphill battle because then the question becomes, how do you be less of a dick? And to yourself, first and foremost. This is the thing I wish I could teach people, is that the people who are the biggest jerks to you or to their families or to their friends, it's because internally they're jerks to themselves. I was, my dad was doing the best he could. He was verbally abusive towards me and my mom and my sister and would always say, you're stupid, you're a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. So that was the internal dialogue I had going on all of my young adult life is I'm stupid, I'm worthless, I'm a piece of shit. It must be true, right? So here I am, I'm 22 years old. I'm doing my first, I think 22 or 23, my first personal development class. And here's how this went down. So I meet this guy and he's hot, like smoking hot, because that's the priority when you're 23, right? You don't give a shit about spirituality. It's our intelligent too. And funny, but also very hot. So I meet this guy, start dating him. And as we start dating, he does this personal development class that his best friend gifts him. So after he does it, he's like one of those guys on a soapbox. If you do this thing, your life too shall be saved, right? And I'm like, fuck you. No, like you're not the boss of me. You're not going to tell me what to do. So this goes on for about the first 5 months or so, 6 months that we're dating. And finally, after he's just like beating me down and down about the stupid class, right? It's one day in August of about 2005. And one day I decide I'm going to take this stupid class. And he's delighted. He's like, this is the best news ever. To prove it's a cult. And he literally, he's like, I don't care. As long as you take it, they're going to transform you. So here we are. It's September of 2005. And I go into this room. It's a Friday morning. It's a 3-day class where everybody, like 150 people gathered in a beige room outside LAX. And the guy who's co-leading the class up at the front, Jerry, says, does anybody have any questions before we get started? And he looks out in the audience. My hand goes up. He says, yes, you over there in the Von Bitch t-shirt. I kid you not, Jem. It was a popular brand at the time in LA. I had Von Bitch emblazoned in magenta across my ample bosom to make it very clear why I was there, right? And I said, how would you respond to the fact that this, meaning the class, is a cult? The guy looks at me, gives a little side eye and a chuckle. He says, if it is a cult, it's the best damn cult you'll ever join. Next question.
Right.
I sit there, Jem. Now, at the time, I'm doing copious amounts of drugs, drinking almost every day, bulimic for 7, 8 years at that point, throwing up 20 times a day, already tried to take my own life 3 times, and generally hate myself in the world, right? But I'm making do. I'm faking it, right? So I'm sitting there all weekend, Jem. And I am stewing in self-righteousness and being a judgy bunny. People are getting breakthroughs in their relationships, breakthroughs with themselves. My arms are crossed and I'm just glaring at everybody who's having these breakthroughs. So finally, the class culminates and here's my boyfriend who's there and his best friend and everybody's there to celebrate my transformation, except I haven't transformed. So the woman, this tall Australian woman, Aussie, who comes up, who has been co-facilitating the class, she looks at me and she says, are you going to do the advanced class? I said, sweetheart, darling, it was stifling enough having sat in this room the last 3 days. Do you really think I would put myself through this hell again? And she looks at me, looks at my boyfriend, and he shakes his head. He says, don't get me started. It took her 8 months just to do this one. And this was the moment where my life profoundly changed. There was before and after. So I looked at my boyfriend and I said, this is an at-will relationship. You can leave anytime you want. And the tall Aussie woman looks at me and she says, can I be really straight with you? I said, sure, darling, you go ahead. You be really straight with me. She points at me and says, you are a nasty thing. You are one of the most powerful women I've ever met in my life. Except you know what? You're using your powers to destroy the people around you. You are like Godzilla walking through a city with a huge tail swinging behind you, knocking down buildings wherever you go. Except guess what? Those aren't buildings. Those are people whose lives you're destroying. She looks at my boyfriend, says, leave her. It's what she needs. And walks away. After I picked my chin up off the floor, I was like, WTF, actually, like what just happened? I go in my office the next day and I wanted to see, was this woman hallucinating? Is she right? I thought I was a good person, Jem. I gave to charity. I tried to be good. Like, I thought I was a good person. Clearly not, right? So I go into my office the next day. There's about 25 people. I'd been working there for a year and was pretty successful. And so we're about to have our team meeting and I sheepishly kind of raise my hand and go, guys, have I maybe ever been condescending or demeaning or mean or rude to any of you? Dead silence. I could hear a pin. Until one woman, Adrian, bursts out laughing and is like, J Hill, that was my nickname, you are only the most condescending, demeaning bitch we've ever met in our lives, and we have no idea how you're successful. And that began my 20-year journey of figuring out how to be less of a dick to myself and others.
Oh, wow. Oh, gee whiz. Thanks. Thanks, Aussie woman, for calling it straight.
Well, it's funny. She became a dear friend. I borrowed her house in Sydney and she wound up moving in with us in LA and she was instrumental and we're still in touch to this day, but she was incredible.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so good. Oh, wow. What a story. Yeah, sometimes it just takes someone to come up and just, look us in the eye and shake us just in that right moment, in that right time, in that right way and just go, hey, I see you. And you were called, and for whatever reason, it was just the moment, right? I mean, you could have heard that from someone else at some other time and you would have just said, oh, whatever, but in that moment, it just landed with you. Amazing. Amazing. All right. Okay. I want to know if you could go back, I mean, you spend time with your younger girl every day, but if you could go back to her now and she was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, and you could go back and share something with her that would just make her squeal with delight and surprise and just go, no way, that happens in my life. What would you share with her? I mean, I'm sure there's more than one thing, but what's one thing that you could share with her that would just blow her away?
I think it would be our tribe. I think it would be the Jen Hill tribe, Jem. If I told her that, sweetheart, you have 315 people who you love and adore and you get to spend time with them and they're your people and they're part of your tribe, she'd be like, what? I have that many friends? Are they all awesome? I'd be like, yeah, they're all even better than awesome. Because as Jem knows, we have this group we're part of called the Jen Hill Tribe /Love Club. And never in a million bajillion years did I think, as somebody who was lonely, I share in the book that I spent most of my young adult life either helping the special needs kids in the library, reading books. And as I got older, I was always alone. I felt so crushingly lonely, Jem, that I could have never fathomed having 2 friends or 5 friends or 10 friends, let alone 315 friends. And that doesn't even include all my friends around the world, probably closer to 1,000 globally, who I actually consider legitimate friends. I remember when my business partner came to my wedding in Portugal, she's like, Jen, I've never met somebody who has this many close friends. Like, actually, this,
Yeah.
it's just like, I love it. And I think that's part of my purpose, Jem, is to help people bring greater community and to find their own tribe. It's not about the Jen Hill tribe. It's about the Jem Fuller tribe. It's about the Bobby or Jenny or Susie tribe. It's about how do we find our people in this crazy, wild world filled with so much loneliness and craziness. How do we find our people? And it starts by finding yourself. Like, that is the biggest message that I wish I could give to everybody. It's what I call the golden triangle of connection.
Mm.
When develop that deep intimacy with yourself, the inner child work, the meditation, the breath work, whatever it is that you use to go deeply, that allows for deep intimacy to others. And that in turn allows for intimacy and experience of purpose. But if you're missing this, I was just at 3 or 4 family office events the last 2 weeks in Palm Beach and Miami. No matter how much money you have, I don't care if you're worth billions or hundreds of millions or tens of millions or $2, if you don't have connection to yourself, the money is empty and meaningless. And you hear this all the time from celebrities, athletes, the most powerful people, the most famous people in the world. If you're not connected to yourself, you're bankrupt. Wealth is not just how much is in your bank. Wealth is how much love you have for yourself. And that then fully perpetuates outwards to the love that you get back in return in dividends.
Mm. Yes, so true. I'm going to take one little step back to how prolific you are in your connections, but they're all genuine, right? So I just want to make this point because there are not many people I know that can hold 1,000 genuinely deep connections with that many people. And you have this gift that whenever somebody's with you, you are completely present and they feel that in that moment, they're everything to you in that moment because you are just so present. But you have this incredible Rolodex of a mind that can go, oh, you need to meet this person, and this will help, da, 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 and then you make the introductions on the spot. And I'm wondering, is that thanks to your autism? Is there something about the autism there's a little bit of a superpower in there? Because I don't know many people that can do that.
Yeah, I've had scientists look at my brain, and long before I got diagnosed as being on the spectrum, I think it was around 2010 or 11, there was a brain science center in Orange County, California. And I remember the scientists who looked at my brain, there's something called an alpha wave. So an alpha wave is one of the different states. There's alpha, delta, theta, et cetera, et cetera. And a healthy alpha wave is between 8 and 12. At least this was what they had told me back at the time. 10, 15 years ago when I got this done. So a healthy alpha wave should be between 8 and 12. That means you're healthy, you don't have mental health issues, blah, blah, blah. I had 2 waves at all times, Jem, happening at the same exact time. So
Oh, wow.
it's like 1 out of a bajillion people have this, where it means the way the scientists who studied my brain explained it, it's like I'm a radio tower getting 2 signals at the exact same time 24/7. So that's why I couldn't meditate for years. People would always tell me, hey, it'll really help you to meditate. It was only when I learned transcendental meditation about 13 years ago that was then the catalyst and the breakthrough point into me being able to calm. Because, oh my God, if you go back, if you Google Jennifer Cahill and you look at speeches I gave 10, 15, 20 years ago, I'll try to imitate how I used to speak and be. So, Jem, I would talk like this and I was so breathy and I couldn't even understand myself. And I'd say, I talk really fast and you're just going to have to follow along. And I was like, like I was exhausted hearing myself. But
Oh,
now that I worked with one of the most top vocal coaches in the world, Arthur Samuel Joseph, who trained Tony Robbins and Pierce Brosnan, and he used to call me bird breath when we first started working together. And then he taught me the power of breath long before I started doing heart math work. Arthur taught me one of his modalities called a conscious loving breath. So I think when I learned to harness that superpower, that horsepower in my brain of double the amount of like alpha waves as the typical person, I don't know. Now that I've been diagnosed as being on the spectrum, I don't know if there's any correlation, although I know part of being on the spectrum in general, of having any of neurodiversity, such as dyslexia, ADHD, autism, or what have you, is that the brain, the definition of neurodiversity is the brain works differently. So I'm sure somehow or another it's tied in there. But yeah, it's part of, I think, one of my superpowers is that my brain I almost can't catch thoughts as quickly as they come in. Even my husband or my mom, it's fun. We play a game. My mom and I are very, very close. My husband and mom love each other. And every day we play New York Times Spelling Bee together, where you have these 7 letters and you have to form them into words. And sometimes I move too fast for them. And and like my husband will be like, please slow down. So
yeah.
it's taken decades since then of learning how to slow down, how to speak, how to do it. But I could be having a full-blown conversation with you and writing an essay while you and I are talking at the
Yeah,
same.
I know. I've noticed that with you. It's incredible. It's really quite amazing. You and I have hung out a bit, and I've yeah certainly noticed it. And it seems like a superpower now. I'm wondering, was it ever tough or tricky for you when you're young and your mind was racing so much, but you wouldn't have known that you were different from others? Did you just think that everyone's minds went a million miles an hour like yours?
I didn't. I did and I didn't. I knew that there was something different about me. And where I grew up in San Diego, I was put in what's called like gifted classes or something like that. So I remember this is one of my favorite moments as a child, where they put me in one of these classes and you were given a mousetrap, some sand, a candle, and a match, and you had to figure out how to like light the candle, put out the candle using a
Right,
mousetrap.
right,
And that
right.
was my idea of like fun, right?
Yeah.
And I do remember being frustrated with my parents because I knew there was something different about me. In middle school, I was offered to study in a castle with Rhodes Scholars. So they took the three smartest people in the school and my parents didn't let me do it. They're like, no, it'll ruin her socialization. And literally the two friends, Chris and Suzanne, who were invited to study at the same school that I didn't wind up going to in this castle, they went on to be like MIT, like geniuses. And I think it was exactly where I was meant to be, though. Like when I look back, I had to go through those hardships of not understanding others. I think I was just hosting a women's dinner in Miami, and one of the ways that we opened this women's dinner was sharing an interesting fact about yourself. And the fact I shared was I wrote my first book when I was 11 years old, and it was called Bloody Roses. So this was before the days of internet, before the days of Google or any of that. I had encyclopedias, and I wrote a story about this murderer and this police officer who was chasing him. So this police officer's father had been killed by a serial killer, and he was chasing this horrific serial killer who so his dad had died, chasing this horrific serial killer who was killing women, but they couldn't figure out how. There would just be rose and blood, but it was before the days of strychnine, when strychnine was traceable back in probably it was the early 1990s when I wrote this. It wasn't, strychnine didn't become traceable, which is a form of poison, until later in the 1990s. So in the book, this criminal or the serial killer would inject roses with strychnine, puncture the victim using rose thorns with strychnine, and then nobody knew how they died. All they knew is that all these women were dead and da-da-da. So he spends the whole book, he's chasing, and it's building up, it's climaxing. He's chasing himself. He took on dissociative identity disorder of his dad's killer, and the whole time he's chasing himself, and then he has to turn himself in at the end when he realizes he's the crazy killer.
You were
That's
11
what
when
I
you wrote this book?
wrote. So that's how I kind of knew maybe not
Wow.
everybody thought things.
Wow. I would understand it if your 18-year-old self went, give me the drugs, let me drink the booze and take the drugs and just somehow numb myself from this incredible mind. Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh, Jen, I'm aware of your time, but is there anything that we haven't touched on that, anything even that maybe helps people understand, how you've become the person that you've become? For people like me who've met you in the last, 5 years or so, we see this version of you, and there's obviously chapters yet to come. But it is hard to imagine the versions of ourselves that we've been earlier on in the past. Is there anything else? I mean, what do you think about nurture and nature, as in, the genetics and the intergenerational stuff that we are born with, and then also the balance of the way that we're brought up in the environment that we're in? What do you think about that balance, and how has it been for you?
From the bottom of my heart, Jem, I truly believe we choose. We choose our parents, we choose our spouses, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the ones who betray us, the ones who pass away, all the wonderful myriad of things in between. And we choose our obstacles. There was a book I once read by James Van Praagh called, I think it was called Adventures of the Soul. And when I read it, it hit me like lightning. I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. He said, I want you to imagine being a human is like soul school. And in Soul School, we choose the curriculum. We choose, ooh, I want abandonment. Let me sign up for that one. That sounds like fun. How about give me a dose of betrayal? And how about some poverty? Ooh, that would be great. I would love that. Ooh, maybe I'd like to be ignored and ostracized in society. All these different things can be really, really valuable. So to answer your question, I think we've chosen the exact petri dish that we want to develop in. And as the Kabbalists say, one of my greatest teachers of this life has been David Guillaume. I've been very blessed that the reason I'm in such a healthy state right now is because of the teachers like Arthur Samuel Joseph, David Guillaume, and so many other teachers I've had the privilege of studying under. And one of the analogies that David gave is he says, life is like a movie theater, right? So imagine Jen Hill is in the asshole movie, right?
Yeah.
Like here she's in the asshole movie. And then every time we're given a choice point to react or respond? Something awful happens. Do we complain, justify, explain, defend, get angry, get frustrated? Or do we choose a path of acceptance, of love, of understanding? And according to David and the Kabbalists, what they say is moment by moment, every time that we make those tough choices, we respond rather than react, we actually jump into a new movie. We jump into a movie of Jen who gets to travel the world and have her community. We jump into a new movie where Jen gets to be friends with Jem, but otherwise vibrationally, you and I wouldn't have been aligned. So it's both and. It's that we choose the petri dish, meaning like the circumstances and the parents or the lack thereof of parents and the alcoholic parents or whatever sort of parents you may or may not have had or the absentee parents. And that's the petri dish. But we develop in that petri dish is moment by moment the free will choice we have to react versus respond. And that determines what grows in the petri dish, as Bruce Lipton would say from his work, The Biology of Belief.
Mm. Yeah, there's so many things I love about that that way of being and the choice, the philosophy, but for you it's a lived, felt, no, it's a knowing. Yeah, there's a few things I love about it. One is that we have agency. It's owning our stuff. It's the opposite of victim. It's I chose this. This is happening for me. This is about me experiencing what I need to experience on this journey of consciousness experiencing itself through this world, and then coming into the moment of agency and saying, no, I have responsibility. Whether I react right now in this way or whether I choose to develop the ability to pause and breathe and respond. I love that it's got responsibility and agency, and that just helps you live life's not always happy and it's not always easy, but it's happier and easier when you look at it this way. When you live your life this way rather than feeling like things are happening to you and you don't have anything to say about it. That's a beautiful part for us to wrap this up on, Jen. I think it's just a lovely way. Like I said earlier, I'm going to have in the show notes links to your books. I can't wait for the Arsehole book to come out. What is it? Recovering Arsehole?
The Recovering Asshole, yeah.
The Recovering Arsehole. Okay. Yes, we're going to be. No. When's it coming out? How long till it comes out?
It comes out later this year. If anybody goes to antiassholeprayer.com and you sign up there, two things will happen. One, you will get my favorite prayer of all time, which is a mantra I came up with called the Anti-Asshole Prayer. And it also includes 20 of my other favorite mantras. So if you sign up for your email there, you'll get access to that. And you'll also be put on the waiting list to be the first one notified when the book comes out.
Awesome. Okay. Well, people will have plenty of time to do that because this is going to come out in the next month, I reckon. I'm so excited to launch this and I'm so grateful for you coming on my show, Jen, and I really do appreciate our friendship. I love you to bits and I'm grateful to be a part of your community. And I'll see you soon.
I love you, my friend, and so much love to each and every one of you out there. And remember, you're doing the best you can, and so is everybody else.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jen. And thank you all for listening. Congrats, you made it to the end of the episode, which would have been very easy to do because Jen's stories are compelling. If you've enjoyed listening to this or watching this, if you're watching us on YouTube or on the streaming platforms that we're going to be on, please let your friends know. Let's spread the word and share the stories. All right. Bye for now. Peace out.